Hi, Ryan here. Couple of things. Can't really do a regular intro. First and foremost, this should actually be a different guitar to be a, I guess you could say, fair comparison, because Epiphone does have an Epiphone like cross Gibson custom 1959 Les Paul standard. I'm renting this guitar, and that is not a guitar that is available to rent, and I don't want to buy that guitar to make the comparison. So yeah, if you want to make that note, this should be the 1959 Epiphone Les Paul standard. I highly agree with you. I just don't have that at my disposal to make the video. And the next thing is, I understand, man. This is a $1,000 guitar Canadian. This is a $9,000 guitar Canadian. So it's gonna make some people a little upset just to see it, even just the thumbnail. I promise you in this video, I'm not going to tell you that this is better than this. You could buy 9 of these instead of buying 1 of these. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things to consider. But I'm literally just going to go over the differences, and I'm not going to try and tell you what you should buy, because that's really not up to me. But today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we're going to take a look at the differences between the Epiphone Les Paul Standard 50s and the Gibson Custom 1959 Les Paul Standard VOS, the Holy Grail. Right off the bat here, there's no playing in this video. So if you want to hear a playing comparison between both of these, it'll be coming out like tomorrow. And then probably the next day. I'll probably do a 1958 against this Epiphone here, and then the 1959 against this Epiphone here. But this video is just for those people who ask me, what's the difference between this one and this one? So we'll kind of, take the covers off the control cavities, take a look at the potentiometers, at the capacitors, at the tuning differences and the tuners and the construction differences and stuff like that. I'm also going to end up renting the Epiphone Les Paul Standard 50s, the gold top, because that technically does have different specs to it. The wood is, they actually admit that it's not mahogany. It's either Akame or Sapelli, I believe. But the Epiphone actually admits it now. When I do that, I'll do a what's the difference between that and the 1957, and then do the same thing, some sound comparisons. So let's actually get this ball rolling, though. So we already know Epiphone, Chinese made, gloss polyurethane finish on it. The Gibson here, US made in a specialty building with specially trained individuals, and we have a lighter glossed nitrocellulose finish. Oh god, the next part's gonna just annoy some people. The finish here is a VOS finish. It's vintage original sheen. It used to be called vintage patina, so it is now vintage original sheen / or parentheses vintage patina. VOS used to stand for vintage original specification. I know Gibson still holds the copyright for that. They've also used vintage original spec, vintage old stock, vintage old spec, and just a whole bunch of different things for VOS. But the current regime, VOS is just to differentiate it from regular custom shop, reissue, historic reissue, and the Murphy Lab. That's all it is. I didn't make that decision. They did, but I'm just passing it on. Both guitars here have a slab mahogany body, which is non-weight relief. So that means that the routings that are in the slab of mahogany before they put the carved maple top on it, the only routings that are there are the rear control cavities for the toggle switch and the potentiometers, and then there's a little channel that goes straight across from there to actually put the pickups in and put the wiring in for the pickups, and then to the toggle switch itself. And as stated, there is a carved maple top on top of the slab of mahogany. It's important to note here, the Epiphone uses a veneer on the front. So this is not what the maple actually looks like. There is maple here. However, I don't know how many pieces because they use the veneer to hide what the maple looks like and how many pieces. Also, the back looks really nice here, doesn't it? I know you're going to get some lights. It's nice and figured. That's a veneer as well. They use that to hide the what the mahogany looks like and how many pieces are glued together before they cut out the shape of the guitar. Looking on the back here, it's hard to tell, but it does look like we have two seams. So that would mean there's 3 pieces of mahogany that were glued together before the guitar shape was cut out. Now you may be looking at that as a negative, as in, wow, there's a lot of pieces of wood in my guitar, but it's still a guitar, and if you've been playing it for a while and you really like it, does that really matter to you? Because Epiphone uses veneers, or they use solid colors to hide the wood itself. So that means they don't have to pay somebody to sort and grade their wood. That's a good thing to save money. The Gibson Custom does not have a veneer. So their woods for their maple has to be graded and has to be a certain weight. And the back is a one-piece, lightweight mahogany. So that means they have to pay someone to, again, grade it, because the figuring that's on here is real. They have to pay someone to actually grade and weigh the wood. If it's too heavy, it might actually go down to the Gibson USA shop. Also, it's very important to also note the color here on the back of the guitar. This is aniline dye. That's how they achieve it. Aniline dye will actually leach in to other guitar dyes, and it can absorb, there's a lot of things where, white guitars might not be the greatest idea if you have, guitars that have aniline dye near them. But yeah, we have a single piece mahogany body and a 2-piece flip matched, not book matched, maple top, and this figuring is ridiculous. You also note that both guitars have body binding. When it comes to the Epiphone, they use a different method than the Gibson Custom uses to actually get their binding, and I have yet to actually feel any difference in the binding. Like, you can't feel the binding when you're rubbing your finger over it, whereas the Gibson Customs and the Gibson USAs, you can. A lot of that has to do with poly finish and nitro finish. However, the Gibson Custom, and I'll put it right there on the screen. That's actually called rope binding, and you have to get proper training to be able to do this, and it's a long and expensive process. So that's another one of those things that it's something that adds dollars to your guitar, like quite a few dollars to how much your guitar costs. Does that matter to you? Both guitars here have mahogany necks. Now, the reason that I chose to do this video with the 1959 is because Epiphone lists this as a 1959 medium C neck carve. However, there's a big difference. This is a little chunkier, a little beefier, especially right at the center of the back of the neck, where that's not the case with this one here. This, the Epiphone, is just maybe a couple of millimeters thicker than the 60s slim taper that's on the Les Paul standard 60s for Epiphone. The Epiphone here also is not a one-piece neck. Now, technically it is, because from here to here is one piece. However, there is a joint that brings it into the body of the guitar here. So it's a separate piece right around here where the neck comes in. And also where it attaches the headstock here, because that's not a solid piece, there is a scarf joint at the top where the headphone is attached. Headstock. The Gibson Custom here is a one-piece mahogany neck, and it comes into the body using a long neck tenon. The Epiphone standard 50s has a long neck tenon as well. The standard 60s has a short neck tenon. Of note, both Gibson Les Paul standard 50s and 60s have short neck tenons. Way to go, Epiphone. The Epiphone here has a bound laurel fretboard with pearloid inlays. The frets do not have the little fret nibs on them. That's good for some people because some people like them and some people absolutely hate them. The Gibson Custom here has a bound with the fret nibs and also slightly thinner binding than the Gibson USA rosewood fretboard. Now this also has aged cellulose nitrate inlays. Why is that sort of important? Well, it's flammable when you work with it, so you have to pay for highly trained individuals to not light the things on fire. Looking on the front of the headstock for the Epiphone, we do have the inlaid Epiphone logo, silk-screened Les Paul model logo, and the truss rod cover that we have here says standard. Also, it's the little bell shape 3-screw truss rod cover. On the front of the headstock for the Gibson Custom, we have aged cellulose nitrate inlaid Gibson logo, the silk-screened period correct Les Paul model logo. And if you look at this truss rod cover, it's blank. Back then it was blank, but this is actually sourced material, so that means it increases the price of the guitar for that simple fact. And also, the screws here are aged. The Epiphone has a Graphtec nut, whereas the Gibson Custom has a nylon nut. Not like a stocking nylon, it's a rigid nylon. Some people like it, some people hate it. Just like the fret nibs. Looking at the back of the headstocks where you're going to find the tuners. Now, the Epiphone has the Epiphone Vintage Deluxe Kluson style tuners. They're a little thinner, slightly thinner than the Gibson USA versions. The big thing to note here, we have modern sized tuners. So that means if you want to swap these out for Grovers or your regular locking tuners, you can do that without widening the holes. On the Gibson Custom, we have Kluson Vintage Deluxe tuners. You also note that they are aged. Huge difference here now. We have vintage sized tuners. So that means if you wanted to install modern size locking tuners or just a modern size tuner, like you wanted to put Grovers in here, you'd have to widen the holes for the pegs to fit through because the pegs are too thick. There's some people that have over the last couple of months said, no, you don't have to do that because StewMac actually makes a conversion kit. But the conversion kits that they have are actually for the other way around. So if you wanted to use vintage size tuners in a modern sizing hole, it kind of doesn't work because the hole's too big. So, the tuner kind of moves around. And what they do is they have bigger bushings that fit in here. So it kind of fits the vintage size tuners. Or they have that conversion kit that comes through and it makes the bushings on the inside bigger as well. So unless, they've kind of changed the way that physics works, and they can widen a hole or fit something that's too big to go. I'm not going to say that. There's going to be weird comments. You guys are nasty. Pickup-wise, we're looking at the Epiphone ProBucker 2 in the bridge and the Epiphone ProBucker 1 in the neck. These are Alnico 2 magnets. The Gibson Custom has the custom buckers, which are Alnico 3 magnets. The next part here actually makes me pretty happy. So we're going to take the covers off the control cavities and we'll actually take a look at the potentiometers and the capacitors here. So let's do that right away with the Epiphone. So you'll note a bit of a rat's nest. We have CTS potentiometers, which is fantastic. Those potentiometers are soldered, however, they're connected to the pickups via a quick connect. So if you want to swap out the pickups for another Epiphone quick connect type pickup, easy to do without soldering. Doing the same thing on the Gibson Custom here. Oh, it looks a lot cleaner, does it not? These are CTS audio taper potentiometers. Everything is hand soldered and absolutely beautifully so. We have a great thing in common between both of these guitars that's not on the Gibson version. Both of these have 50s wiring instead of modern wiring. Now, I'll explain that really quickly. So with 50s wiring, if you turn down the volume, it doesn't affect the tone. Whereas modern wiring, if you start turning down the volume, it starts to darken the overall tone of the guitar. So with 50s wiring, turn that volume down, it retains a lot of that high end. But on the other way around, if you start bringing down your tone, it starts to affect the overall volume of the guitar, so it can start to clean things up a little bit more if you have an overdriven signal. Also, you can get in like some high gain situations, it can sort of send through a little bit more high end than you might want. I haven't really experienced that unless it's something that I've experienced it and it's just not inconvenient to me. So that is something to note for 50s wiring over modern wiring. And again, the Gibson version, the Gibson USA version, has modern wiring. And the last thing you want to look at here would be the capacitors for both of these. Now, as a nice treat, the Epiphone actually has upgraded capacitors. So if I move these wires around, you'll actually see that we have some nice, sort of maybe looking like paper and oil caps. I'm not quite sure what these are. Usually on Epiphones, you'd look to see that little tiny red capacitor, like the generic red one. So it's a nice treat, and it's actually very nice and responsive here in the Epiphone. The Gibson, on the other hand, if you look at the capacitor here, it has the paper and oil caps, and these ones here are they're like modeled after the Bumblebee capacitors, but they're not actually the Bumblebee capacitors. They're recreations by another company, kind of a thing, but they're not cheap. The last thing that we'll take a look at here would be the bridge. So the Epiphone here has the Epiphone lock tone bridge. So this has the 3 saddles facing one way, 3 saddles facing the other way. It's so far from what I've seen a troublesome bridge. However, so far so good on this one. Basically the screws, the material that's used in the screws here, not the hardest material. And what ends up happening is you start getting some string buzz, and then they start to wear away, and then eventually you're able to just move the saddle with your thumb. I've had it on a ton of different overseas model guitars. So the main suggestion or recommendation that I give to people who've experienced that, you may not, I haven't on this one so far, but if you do experience that, what I used to do is just grab some Tone Pros. They're inexpensive, and you don't have to pay someone to do it for you. I mean, you got to intonate it, but just watch a YouTube video, get a tuner and a flathead screwdriver, and that might take you 10 minutes. Not a big deal. But I used to use Tone Pros. There's a whole bunch of other brands out there, but because this is an overseas guitar and not a US guitar, they use the metric system. In Canada, we use it too, rather than the imperial system. So basically what you want to do is when you order a replacement bridge, you just have to make sure that it's metric sizing rather than imperial sizing. If you buy the imperial sizing, it's not going to fit. If you buy the metric sizing, it'll fit perfectly fine. Also of note, the way that it actually connects to the body is using that metal doweling / bushing system. So it's not drilled directly into the body. The Gibson Custom here has an ABR1 bridge. Now this has the 2 saddles facing one direction and 4 saddles facing the other direction. This also has nickel-plated brass saddles, so it's an upgraded saddle as well. I have never once had any issue with this type of a bridge. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but I have not had any issues with it. Now, the other thing to note here, it is drilled directly into the body, so it doesn't have that metal doweling / bushing system on the way that the bridge is connected. And a lot of people believe that it gives you like a more solid connection to the wood itself and increases vibrations, but there's a whole bunch of different things that go into the custom shop guitars, like the glues that are used, single piece mahogany body over 3 or 4 in these or what have you. So it's hard to really narrow down what actually makes these guitars feel like they kind of do. And even though this is not an SG video, because people get a little crazy with that, these have different strap buttons on them. They're a little more similar than the ones that you would see are a little more similar to each other than what you would see in the Gibson versions, but still they have different strap buttons on them. And people usually go a little crazy about the medallion that's on there for the cover, for the toggle switch cover on the Gibson Customs. I honestly forget on all of the Les Paul custom shops that I have that it's even there, but it's neat. The last thing I'll touch on here for like differences or what have you would be the fact that the Epiphone comes in a cardboard box. Very cardboard box. The Gibson Custom comes in a premium lift-in case, so the 5-latch lift-in case. So that's what it looks like on the inside. Headstock actually has a little pillow, and this is what comes with inside the case. Now keep in mind, how much did you pay for the case? Like how much was added to the price of the guitar for your Epiphone case or gig bag that didn't come with the Epiphone? And how much was actually added to the price for, these things that didn't come with your Epiphone? I paid for all of these. It was built into the price of the guitar, whether I wanted these things or not. So things like, we have an amber switch tip here, the keys to the case. We have a hang tag for the quality, performance, tradition, and Gibson. We have a hang tag to say that it's using Gibson vintage reissue strings. A hang tag to say that it's a Gibson Custom. A hang tag to actually show what's actually in it. So when I said handmade paper and oil capacitors, it's by a company called Lux. I keep forgetting that. The vintage audio taper potentiometers, they are CTS, so Chicago Telephone Supply Company. Great. The selector and output jack are Switchcraft, and the pickups here are the 59 replica unpotted custom buckers, all in a hang tag that I paid for whether I wanted them or not. We have the cover for an alternate cover for the toggle switch. We have the Gibson Gold warranty card that has that pre-pack checklist here, which for the Gibson USA, this is usually what it is constituted as their COA. We have a Les Paul model hang tag. We have a card saying that it's great quality. We have a card advertising for Murphy Lab, even though this is not a Murphy Lab. We have a card saying, hey, dealers, don't put these in the window to be exposed by sunlight. We have instructions for the tune-o-matic, not the stop bar. And then we have instructions on how to adjust your humbucker pickups. Then finally, we have a little booklet here, which is your actual certificate of authenticity. Very different than what comes with the Gibson USA. And again, I paid for all of these things, and guess how many times I open my case to look at them? If I do a video like this, that's about it. Now, that's really it for the differences and stuff like that. However, when it comes to the custom shop stuff, the reissues especially, so there's technically 3 lines. So there's the generic custom shop, which I don't like calling it the generic custom shop. It's basically the Les Paul Custom, or like the Access or what have you, where they don't use hot hide glue. They use long neck tenons. Basically like Gibson USA on steroids, I guess. Then they have the historic reissues, which is what this one is. And then they have the Murphy Lab, which is basically an aging area for the historic. So it takes a historic and it tarnishes more the hardware and rounds the fretboard out a little more, and then it also like does certain aging. I have one Murphy Lab, absolutely love it. Like the work that they put on it is fantastic, and you actually it's nice to feel all the different bumps in them. I only like the light aging because otherwise it's like missing wood and stuff like that, or missing finish, and I don't know, that just seems a little scary to me. But I do want to go through the like craziness of their sourced parts. So I'll go to the website and I'll read it off here, because that's something that is often overlooked. So the historic reissues, they're not for everybody. A lot of people just like, when it comes to they'll want like the Epiphone or the upgraded Epiphone, or the Gibson or the upgraded Gibson or what have you. When it comes to historic stuff, it might not be what you're looking for, and you pay so much extra just for like knobs and like the screws and stuff like that. They're aged screws, so you have to pay for aged screw. You know what I mean? So I'll list off some of that stuff. So the binding material that they use is 1-ply Royalite. The pick guard is laminated cellulose acetate butyrate. I'm probably saying that wrong. Truss rod, authentic 1950s no tube. Truss rod cover, authentic step 2-ply. The knobs are gold butyrate top hats. The switch tip is amber Catalan. Which probably means I paid a lot for the switch tip, and I haven't really installed it. I kept the original like cream one on there. The switch washer is a replica cellulose acetate butyrate. The jack plate cover, laminated cellulose acetate butyrate. The control covers are black Royalite. The strap buttons, well, aluminum. The mounting rings are the M69 cellulose acetate butyrate. And the pickup covers are authentic profile nickel silver. Anything else that goes a little crazy? Anything else that goes a little crazy? Not really. Okay, so a lot of that stuff adds up into, the price differences. So if you don't agree with all of the crazy things that go into the historic stuff, then don't buy one. You know what I mean? And if maybe there's not, if you're looking at the Epiphone and it doesn't matter if it has 3 pieces of mahogany because you don't feel it when you play it, or at least you can't tell if you feel it if you play. Then get the Epiphone. Like it's pretty easy. Like I said, $1,000 Canadian for the Epiphone, $9,000 for the Gibson custom VOS. That's a crazy amount of money, and when I think of how much I've spent last year on just like the custom shop stuff, I kind of want to throw up in my mouth a little bit. But just things like the fact that it uses hot hide glue because that crystallizes, so it kind of fuses the wood together. Nickel-plated brass saddles, which I could probably get from another company. The Lux paper and oil capacitors, the black or their Bumblebee redesigns or what have you. Just you're looking at the ABR1 drilled directly into the body, single piece, weighted, lightweight mahogany and graded, and the crazy freaking top that's on it. The thing plays, when I play it, it rings out as one solid piece. It does not mean that when I play the Epiphone, I go, it's not a guitar, and that's really stupid because a lot of people will treat it like that. And I don't agree with it because I can, if I came down to my basement studio here, had a whole bunch of amps around me, and I, had the day locked in to record guitar, and the only guitar I had down here was the Epiphone, I'd be wondering where the hell my guitars are, but I'd still be able to play, and I'd still, enjoy playing it. I don't understand when some people say, this is a guitar. This is, I don't know what, scrap wood or something? Don't be stupid. If you go into the store, you try the Epiphone, you try the Gibson Custom, and you can't really tell the difference, and you really like the Epiphone, and you know what, you definitely have the money to go home with the Epiphone, maybe 2 or 3, then get the Epiphone or 2 or 3 of them. It's really stupid when you do that. And do me a giant favor, because I've seen it way too many times, and it's really, really stupid. If you go into a store, and there's like a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid buying an Epiphone Les Paul, and they hand over their money, and they got their guitar, and they're like, wow, this is awesome, I got a Les Paul. Don't be the jerk that goes up to the kid and go, you bought an Epiphone. Wait till you're older, you can get a real Les Paul. That's a jerk move. Because that kid might have been dreaming about that guitar, working, or, saving up birthday money. And, because usually I've seen that so many times. Like, the guy walks off feeling great about themselves, even though they're a giant D-hole. And the kid's just like, did I waste my money here? Instead of going like, man, I can't wait to get home and play this. Just don't be a jerk. It's just really simple rules for life. Don't be a jerk. And if you play the Epiphone and you like it, buy it, take it home, and play it at home and like it. It's not that big of a deal. Thanks for watching.